Good. So we're going to make a start, and I'll say a couple of things about housekeeping, and then I'll introduce Emma. So welcome everybody, and thanks for joining us on this Friday, almost lunchtime, for this session. My name is Katja. I'm here to help with the technicalities. Do send me a message if you've got any problems. At the moment, the chat is set so you can't message each other, but you can message everyone or you can message me. We are live streaming this on Facebook, which also means that you can come back to it and rewatch it if you would like to. And we're recording the talk. Yes, and it's going to be an hour and a quarter, and there's going to be, Emma's going to say something, and then there will also be plenty of time for questions. If you've got a question at any point, pop it into the chat box and we'll come back to it. Yeah, so that's it for now. Yes. And it's, yeah, I'm really delighted to be here and that Emma is here. So a few years ago, a friend of mine who used to work in the city came back from a weekend trip from Whitstable, smiled with a radiating smile, and she said her main highlight that weekend was that she had been to this book launch where she met this woman who used to work in the city and then became a Buddhist nun. And my friend was so inspired, she bought a stack of her books and distributed them among all of us. So that's how I came to read Emma's book, Set Free, which I also found really inspiring. And I think that's because it's, on one hand, a very, very unique and fascinating story, but at the same time, it also speaks to this universal quest for truth. So I'm really delighted that Emma's joined us here at Buddhafield, and I'm really looking forward to your talk.
Great. All right, Katja, thank you very much. So just to check, with the chat function, hopefully everybody has their chat function up and running. Can they message me if they need to message me, Katja?
They can message to everyone, so you will see it as well.
Okay, so is it possible, in case somebody wants to ask me a private question, which I'll address without referencing them, is it possible for them to send me a chat, or not so easy?
I don't think that's easily possible, because then I would have to enable it to everyone.
Okay, all right, never mind. So the main conclusion from that part of it is that I love to take questions, and I can tell, you know, we can go many directions in this time we have together. And so I put together a few thoughts, but really it's best if you have any particular reason for being here today with me, and you have some question about absolutely anything other than how to park a car, which is not my skill set. So you can ask anything about Buddhism, meditation, Bhutan, life transformation, compassion, motivation. You can ask me any basic Buddhist question that you wish to, about practice, whatever, and I will seek to answer it in a way which helps everybody. So that's my main interest. They asked me to do 2 events here at Buddhafield. The first one today is more about kind of finding your own path, I suppose you can say, with reference to my particular story. And then tomorrow I'll be teaching on compassion from 11:30 till 1, I think, and that's really my specialist subject. So tomorrow, if you want to come to that one tomorrow at 11:30, you will gain a lot of direct teachings on compassion, the philosophy, and the practice of it. We may touch on that today, but you know, officially the main teaching one is tomorrow. So let's begin. I think Katja already mentioned. So this is the book that I wrote in 2015. mainly to support the charity that I had founded for special needs children in Bhutan, and it was called Set Free, which, if you're young enough, doesn't sound too much like Born Free, which is a bit of a Buddhist joke there. And it's called A Life-Changing Journey from Banking to Buddhism in Bhutan. And I will just read the back cover because that's an easy, quick way to know quite a lot in a short space of time. Emma Slade, that happens to be me, was a high-flying analyst for an international bank when she was taken hostage on a business trip to Jakarta. She thought she was lucky to come out of it unscathed, but over the ensuing weeks and months, as the financial markets crashed, the trauma following the event took hold. Realizing her view on life had changed profoundly, she embarked upon a journey, discovering the healing power of yoga and opening her eyes to a kinder, more peaceful way of life. From fast-paced city life to the stillness of Bhutan's Himalayan mountains, Set Free is an inspiring true story of an astonishing life lived to extremes and all that it entailed: work, travel, spirituality, relationships, and the underlying question of what makes a meaningful life. So now you know everything. We can leave the event here, and that's that. So that's the overriding arc of my life, really, from a very pivotal moment in Jakarta, being held in a hotel room with a gunman, to where you find me now as a Buddhist nun ordained in the Himalayan kingdom of Bhutan. If you haven't been there, I highly recommend you do, but don't go right now because you can't enter Bhutan right now. You can put it in your mind as a thought for later if you haven't yet been to that country. So in the literature for this talk, they asked me to talk about pivotal moments in my life which have made a change. And you may want to ask me about those, but it may be quite boring actually for somebody to go on and on about their own life, to be frank. So I thought I'd just put a couple of slides here so that we get a kind of overview on how we can think about the reality of human life and its difficulties. So I'm going to now try and be very technical and share my screen so that hopefully will be okay. There we go. So firstly, to start us off in the right way, I just wanted to remind everybody, and I know if you're at Buddha Field, you're probably at Buddha Festival, you're probably very familiar with this. So let's begin here. Both yogic and Buddhist philosophy believe you are much larger than this body or this particular time you are living in. And probably, I put this is both important and easy to forget in everyday life. And so probably when you wake up in the morning, your first thought isn't to recall the part of your being which is beginningless and endless. It's probably not going to be your first thought in the morning, your starting place. But as a Buddhist practitioner, really is the starting place. And if you can remember it and not forget it, many things can change and shift in quite helpful ways. So I thought we'd begin with that, yeah. Now, in terms of looking at the development of a human in relation to the particular circumstances, the causes and conditions that they have been born into in this particular time, let me see if I can move my slide on. This would be helpful. Hiya. Ha. There we go. Here we are now. So I just made a very simple graphic here, which relates to my life, but is also, I hope, helpful to others, right? So I've talked about 3 stages here. Stage 1 is an internal response to an external change, which is defined as a threat. Okay, so you can imagine that I was in total shock when I opened my hotel doorroom to find a gun pointed into my chest. It's just really not something that you expect to happen. And I don't recommend it. It's not preferred workshop style. I'm not asking you to go out and find those circumstances for yourself. It's just something that happened to me. But many of us, in lots of different ways, including with this COVID situation, actually will have experienced some of the initial responses of the human nervous system to the unexpected and something that's probably not wanted. And they will include the responses that I've put here. We know the fight and flight response, also the fold and the freeze response. And so in a very short space of time, from opening a hotel door room to being on the floor with a gun at my head, obviously I experienced a lot of these very profound emotions. And that's the thing. And many people will have very great difficulty in their life, right? Lots of suffering and difficulty, etc. And recovering from something like that, it's not particularly easy, I would say. But I had to recover from it. Otherwise, what to do? Otherwise, I just stay in a state of horrible suffering for a long period of time. And as many people who have experienced profound trauma find, they have flashbacks, which is like the mind's inability to fully digest something. It's like the most horrible mental regurgitation happening, etc. So I thought it's interesting to consider when we have these external shocks that we don't really choose. What do we do? How do we go forward? Yeah. And the Buddhist perspective is perhaps quite interesting here. So here we have stages 1, 2, and 3. Okay. Definition: resistance to obstacles on the path. Well, we consider life as a path, isn't it? That's one of the many meanings of the word Dharma, is the path. Yeah. So you can definitely say that this incident, which was so unexpected in Jakarta, was definitely you could see appeared to be an obstacle on the path, right? But I didn't want to stay there. So from a Buddhist point of view, the next stage is the acceptance of what has occurred. When you've been through something traumatic that you don't want, or even maybe you can think with COVID, you just kind of keep pushing it away. It comes back and pushing it away. And the mind, the upper layers of the mind become very, very agitated and churny. And the mind doesn't have its peacefulness. It doesn't have the stability. So along with acceptance of something as part of the path, even though you didn't choose it, apparently, even though you maybe didn't want it, it has happened, it is there, comes a little bit of stability of the mind, as if the mind can feel more comfortable with the situation. And we can talk more about this at length. So you can see this as an equivalent to sort of beginning levels of meditation, when we talk about calmness or peacefulness, this kind of basic acceptance of what is on the path. And then from a Buddhist point of view, the third stage would be transforming obstacles on the path. And this is really a very profound aspect of Buddhist practice. How do you transform an obstacle on the path into something that is helpful, into something which brings wisdom, which allows you to gain greater insight, to expand your sense of what is possible, to maybe expand yourself of your sense of what it is to be human, to be alive, etc., etc., etc. So you can see in this schema with 3 stages, I've just generally put down a situation which is a path, but it's also very, I feel, personally relevant to me. I had something very, very traumatic thrown on me. I didn't want it. I just, the nightmares about it. Who wants nightmares about that? Etc. And then somehow in my path, I was able to accept, gain some stability of mind, and then to bring some wisdom and kindness out of it. And, you know, it's hard for me to imagine that I wouldn't have, particularly that I wouldn't have founded a charity to help children, perhaps if I hadn't been through the trauma that I've been through. So that would be an example, perhaps, of transforming an obstacle on the path. Yeah. So I thought this is a relevant schema, hopefully for you, but also relates directly to my story. Okay, stop share. There we go. So hopefully that's a thought you can think about in terms of your own life experience also, I think. So obviously I'm writing that from this situation now in 2020. When pivotal moments happen in your life, sometimes you know them, sometimes you don't know actually the pivotal moments. Sometimes you can only see them when you look back, and you can see some of those connections through time. So I think when you live through the flows of a human life, it doesn't have that clear pattern, but when you look back, maybe you can see it, and that can be helpful. So because they called it the pivotal moments, I wrote down just a list of pivotal moments. You may be able to do the same in your life. If you reflect on your life, you may find, you can look back and you can find a few pivotal moments which you know offered you some capacity to see more clearly in an instant. And then you can reflect on what that led to. You know, sometimes we have pivotal moments that allow us to understand more greatly, but we don't do anything about it. We fall back to the same habits, isn't it? So there's always going to be the opportunity offered by a pivotal moment, but then to digest it and change and develop from there, sometimes it's going to require courage to digest the truth of whatever that pivotal moment is really offering you. So I had a very unexpected moment that brought me up short. But I definitely could have continued with my life. I could have continued with the same habits, actually. And often when people have pivotal moments, in the acceptance of them, they don't choose to transform. They simply choose to accept, and then they go back to whatever they were doing before. And that's in your hands. You know, if a pivotal moment comes and offers you some capacity to reassess, it's up to you whether you wish then to put that into action and to transform it, or whether you wish to remain in the same way. So often you will find people who are, maybe somebody has died that they loved, and they'll say, oh, I realize now nothing matters but your family, or I don't know what, or da-da-da-da. And then a few months later, it'll all have gone back. So these pivotal moments that offer these opportunities for insight and transformation, it's also whether you choose to take them. So we can discuss that maybe a bit more, what enables you to take them. So I wrote down my pivotal moments here. I found I had 7 of them. And in line with the arc of the book, I guess, and being held hostage and realizing that my life may end, and that I had a feeling that I hadn't done anything of any meaningful value, and I was about to die. And I was still pretty young, right? So I felt a profound despair with the possibility of all I had, being born as a human, well educated, all the love I'd had from my family and my parents, and yet all I'd done really primarily was think about myself. and I was about to die. And that was a very horrible feeling. I knew I wouldn't be able to die. I'd be dying with a profound sense of regret, with a life not filled with love or compassion. And I already knew at that point that without profound love and compassion, somehow it was not going to be peaceful. So that situation really made me feel that very strongly. And it, recovering from the situation took quite a long time, as you can imagine. It wasn't an easy thing to recover from, but the seed of wishing my life to be more meaningful and definitely kinder and more loving and less selfish had been planted in that hotel room. There's no doubt about it. I didn't really know what to do about that, though. You know, and maybe that's a little bit where the courage comes in, because when I decided then to leave my big career, because I knew I couldn't stay there, I had become very itchy with that circumstance, you know, because I had shifted, something mentally I'd shifted. When I decided to leave it, though, nobody could tell me what was going to happen. Nobody could say, it's going to be all right. You know, you're going to stumble across yoga. You're going to start to travel the world and explore yoga. Then you're going to really deepen your interest in meditation. Then eventually you're going to go to the Himalayas. And within a few days of arriving in the Himalayas, you're going to meet the person who is going to be your teacher. At that point, nobody could tell me that. In fact, people kept asking me, what are you going to do now? What are you going to do now? And it was very hard to say, I don't know. I don't know. You know, I'm living a big job for absolutely nothing. I have no plan. I have no map. And I think that's a little bit where the courage comes in. Also, the degree of discomfort, feeling I was no longer on the right path, had, you know, was quite powerful at that point. And because of that feeling that I couldn't somehow face myself if I didn't become a more compassionate person in this life that I'd felt so profoundly. If I was going to remain comfortably, I couldn't just put that back in a box and forget about it. I had to do something with it. But at the time, I didn't know, you know, any of that. And so then I just, you know, I set off on this journey of exploring yoga and eventually Buddhism. And there were many profound moments along the way, as you can imagine. And it was, you know, it took a while for me to accumulate enough understanding of yoga and Buddhism to see how closely they were linked in their origins, in their definitions, etc., etc., etc. And then, you know, eventually feeling that I was very interested in meditation and Buddhist practice, but I hadn't quite found the right circumstances for that to really come alive. And that's really what happened when I went to Bhutan. And that's, I guess, why Bhutan's, you know, is a really, meeting my Lama there is a very pivotal moment. And it's described in the book, and it's a moment I'll never forget, you know. Yeah, so there's that. And yeah, so those are some key pivotal moments in my story. Yeah. So Katja, should we have some questions before I go on? Even you, maybe, Katja, would want to ask me some questions so that I can go forward in a way which helps everybody, having given them that overview.
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify, it was written in the chat, but people can message you directly because you're...
Okay, that's good. Yeah, I like messages.
If anyone has a question, please do come forward. Otherwise, it might be a slight a slight detour, but I'm interested because I can see your shrine behind you, and
Yeah.
I'm interested if you could say say a bit about the Buddha and Bodhisattva figures on the shrine, what they mean to you.
Oh, yeah, sure. So on my shrine here, if you have read the book, you'll know that I was born in a house with a lying Buddha from my grandfather, and this is the lying Buddha mentioned in the book. So this is this lying Buddha, which from a very young age, I felt very much like, okay, this needs to come and be with me. Bring it into my room. And so here it is. It's from Pema, Myanmar. So this is the Buddha in the, as it's called, going into parinirvana, where he, with his final sentence where he said that all phenomena is compound phenomena, right? He gave that final teaching on impermanence. So he is here. Then I have my 7 offering bowls of water. Water being the thing that everybody can offer. And so this is a daily thing you do. You offer your 7 bowls of water with a small prayer. And then at the end of the day, then you take the water, and I usually use it to plant with some plants outside. So that's there. And then I have my bell and my duje. You can see bell and duje. This is the duje, like duje sempa. And the vajra is the equivalent Sanskrit word. And that is from my Lama. Those are the ones that he used in his 3-year retreat, and he passed them to me a few years ago. And so they remain here. Obviously some flower offerings, and one butterfly came to see me the other day, and then decided to kind of leave their body behind. So they're here in the flowers here on these red roses here. And the Tara statues here. I don't know if you can see the Tara statues here. And the Tanka is from Chenrezig, the mind of compassion. You can see that, I think, 4-armed Chenrezig. So I'm not sure how much everybody knows about all of this kind of thing, but so my Tanka, compassion Tanka, is from Lopen Kinzang, one of my teachers in Bhutan, who teaches me my Shedra, my Buddhist philosophy studies. And so he's a very patient person. And together we translated the compassion, one of the compassion texts from Bhutan. Together we did that. And so he knows that the compassion practice is my main thing. So he offered me this, very nice. And then I think you will know the story that from one tear of the mind of compassion arose this female emanation of compassion, which is called Dara. And I have been offered 2 of these by various people. This one was offered to me by my meditation teacher in Bhutan, the Dorje Lopen of Bhutan, and for my charitable work in Bhutan. And another one was offered to me by one person in Germany who came to meet me in Bhutan. And so yes, that is my simple shrine. I have other flowers here also, but I don't think you can see them all. And then I have the traditional incense box of a Bhutanese practitioner. Does that answer those questions well enough, Katja?
Thank you. That's really helpful. I think it just also shows all the different aspects of your, or not all the different, but some of the different aspects of your practice.
Yeah, it's very simple. When you go to Bhutan, you'll find that, or other places other than Bhutan, Nepal, Tibet, whatever, you'll find that many shrines can be stuffed with a lot of things that have accumulated over time. You know, lots of offerings and pictures and presents and I don't know what. So mine is fairly simple here. So I just have the things which really mean a great deal to me. The teachers, the photographs of my teachers, they're not directly here. They're in other places near me. So usually you may expect to see more photographs of a teacher, and my Dharma text, my compassion Dharma text, also is just to the side. Usually on a shrine you would have some element of written Dharma, and it's just over there. If people are wondering where it is, I just keep my shrine very simple, so that's that. Okay, I can see I've had a couple of questions here, so I just want to have a look at these in the first instance. Yes, okay. So despite obviously knowing that one is not going to live forever, it's still extremely shocking to discover that you might not live forever, and that the time of your current life will have an ending. You know, it's quite hilarious how we're always surprised by this. And I too was surprised by it in the room in Jakarta. So coming to terms with the fact that you have this really precious human life, as we call it, yeah, the opportunity of a precious human life. And then coming to terms with the fact that it is, this current situation is impermanent. These two things go hand in hand. And personally, as I said, I felt that understanding very keenly when I felt I was about to lose my life, because I knew in the first instance that I was maybe just about to lose it, and I knew its preciousness, that as I'd never seen it before. And that, so they go hand in hand, those two realizations, yeah? So if you're in a situation where you're suddenly very aware of the impermanence, then even with the impermanence, and meditate on the preciousness that's there, understand the preciousness. When we have a shock or something, sometimes we can feel very despairing, we can feel very nihilistic. Try to find the preciousness. What is how you understand the preciousness of your human life now, and you may understand it in a way which makes the next half an hour more incredible, more miraculous, more capable of seeing clearly and helping others, you know, than when you've lived asleep for 2 years. If one has the opportunity to know that the impermanence is coming, but it doesn't appear to be super immediate, then you have a great opportunity to make everything right. You have a great opportunity to apologize, seek forgiveness, make everything calm in all the circumstances of your life, and prepare your mind. And so when you're ready, you can think about that. Yeah, you can ask me another question here if you wish to. Okay, so somebody's asking me about how do you know where to direct your energy? Because there's always lots of things that a human can do, and we have many aspects to our life, isn't it? So from a Buddhist point of view, the path of a human life is to accumulate greater compassion and greater wisdom. Now, the methods for those can be many. You can accumulate greater compassion in your mind. You can expand your sense of compassion to others in many, many different ways, if you wish to. you can expand your understanding of wisdom if you wish to. That is the wish, that is the motivation, but the method can be many. So if you look at these circumstances of your life, which you call different things like work, life, community, whatever, right? But if you look at them, not really calling them those classifications, if you come back and say, in this human life, I wish to use the circumstances that arise to develop greater compassion and greater wisdom, then you'll find in all of those pots, you have an opportunity. There's simply the circumstance for developing your mind in that way. So then anything you encounter can be an opportunity for goodness, for growth, for realization. So that would be more the approach that I would take. If you want to ask a follow-up question, then you can ask a follow-up question. Yeah. Okay, so general question here. I'm reading your book. Well done, Liz. Thank you. That always makes me so happy. You know, I'm still dreaming of that moment when I walk somewhere and there's somebody in a cafe reading my book. It still hasn't happened. You know, feel free to plant yourself somewhere near me so I stumble across you doing that. That would make my day. And I instruct that you practice without an obvious sangha around you. Yes, well spotted. Probably one of the most challenging aspects of my path has been feeling like a oddity in the West and like a stray dog in the East. And so the idea of finding somewhere where I fit in and look like everybody else has not happened. And that has been quite challenging at points. I was given the opportunity to reside in Bhutan in a Buddhist nunnery with other Bhutanese nuns, which is an incredible honor. But I didn't grow up in that culture. I grew up in the West, where I'm quite forthright. I like asking questions. I'm quite keen on challenging things. I'm not particularly institutional. I'm pretty hot on gender equality. I have to recognize those were the circumstances of a lot of my life, and they're not going to suddenly go. So the comfort of recognizing those around you in an outwardly sense are like you. It hasn't really been given to me. Obviously, inwardly, there's no difference, but sometimes these outer habits, mannerisms, ways of being, they are quite different, you know, so it's been kind of interesting. I have some serious students who study with me. I mean, I do various teachings on Zoom, etc. And I have some students who are serious students, and they form my Sangha in terms of my teaching Sangha. And that means a great deal to me. They're very precious to me, and that they appreciate my teachings, and maybe in some small way I help them. That means a great deal for me in terms of the Sangha. In terms of my greater Sangha, in terms of above my head, then they're all in Bhutan, and you can say their bodies would be male bodies, and that's just how it is. So I've had to be very disciplined and determined, you know, without so much of the outer support that you might wish for. It also gives me a freedom, though. You know, it gives me a freedom. When you're within a fixed non-existence in a nunnery, you have no personal choice. You have no personal choice. Everything is timetabled, right? And that's not a bad thing. I'm not saying that in a bad thing. I'm just saying that if I'm outside those circumstances, I have a lot of choice. I can run the charity, I can write things, I can teach things, I can, you know, I can go places, I can meet people, I can plant some plants in the garden, I can lie and look at the sky and think about something. You know, I have a lot of choice. And so that's obviously something that I'm very lucky with. So there's always, you know, different ways of looking at these things. Again, if you want to ask another question, then you can ask a question. I think you know from Buddhist point of view, we take refuge in the Buddha Dharma and the what's called noblest Sangha in the basic refuge prayer in Buddhism. From a Vajrayana point of view, we would add in the refuge in the Lama from a Vajrayana point of view, but there will always be this sense of taking refuge in the Sangha. Sometimes that will be a physical Sangha around you that you can see, but mainly it will be a feeling of mental connection. And that I have in huge amounts. So that is probably the thing there, I think. Right, let me just have a look here. That's nice that people are asking questions. I really appreciate that. It's always much more kind of useful. People ask questions. Do you have any regrets about the life you had before you became a nun? Do I have any regrets? I hope you've put that round. Sometimes people ask me if I regret being a nun versus missing things from before. So I'm not quite sure if that's, but what do I regret? Yeah, when you start to know your own mind more clearly, it requires a huge honesty. Because from a Buddhist point of view, Buddhism does require you to take responsibility and to see clearly your mental activity, to see your motivations clearly, and to be honest about how they're affecting others, whether they're causing suffering or whether they're bringing happiness to yourself and others. And as I've changed in the course of being a Buddhist nun, yeah, I definitely realized that a couple of people I had been angry with in my life, and that probably had hurt them. And I didn't know at that time how to do anything about it. I didn't know how to, you can say, transform that obstacle. I didn't know how to transform anger into anything that could be something positive. So, when I look back at the things I regret before being a nun, it's probably speaking harshly to people. But I also look back with some compassion, hopefully. It's sort of a little bit like looking at a child that hasn't been properly taught how to deal with their internal state, hadn't got the tools to know what to do. So I also look back a little bit as if it's kind of a lost child there, a little bit, not knowing quite how to deal with their own. I'm not. I have some regret, but I can see it in that greater, context. If I, as a nun now for 8 years or whatever it is, if I still felt those angry moments and wasn't able to deal with it, then I would be very worried. But we can only seek clarity out of confusion, right? Like walking out of a very foggy place, gradually the clouds disappearing, walking clearer and clearer. We have to, when we look back, it will look like a foggy place for sure. Oh, Katya's put the link to the book in here. Well done, Katya. I don't know if people can get that and talk to me at the same time, but you can always try multitasking. Okay, I've had a life here before I think into the book. Oh, right, okay, we have a public question here. Let's look at this. I have difficulties with the idea of no self, no ego. Oh, okay, right, we're in it now. Can spiritual path become just another thing to cling on to and identify with, like, for instance, writing a book and put all your expectations in a result? Like, if people like it or not, or how to succeed, so thank you. Okay, whew, right. I have difficulties with the idea of, and then you could put many things after that sentence. I have difficulties with the idea of it just, you can rethink for a moment of how commonly you experience that in yourself and how much you hear it all over the place, right? Every day about every subject. I have difficulties with the idea of, it could be many things. I have difficulties with the idea of wearing a mask. I have difficulties with the idea of not wearing a mask. I have difficulties with who's in charge of that. I have difficulties with how it goes when I do that. I have difficulties with, yeah, endless, isn't it? And if we remember the Four Noble Truths of the Buddha, the first noble truth is the truth of the origin, the truth of suffering, and the second one is the truth of the origin of suffering. And the truth of the origin of suffering largely comes down to, I have difficulties with the idea of. Yeah. So that's my first thought there. And hopefully not sounding too tough, but quite tough. So in this particular instance, the full sentence is, I have difficulties with the idea of no self, no ego. And at this point, we have brought in a point of Buddhist philosophy here. So let's clarify a few things. Buddhism says, through its philosophy of interdependence and emptiness, that the self is empty of a separate, independent existence. That is what it is empty of. It does not mean that I'm not here and you're not there and we're not together. And sometimes you'll see this phrase, no self, actually translated as non-self. And maybe that's helpful. If you think not of no self, but of non-self, in the sense of how you would normally conceptually define a self. It's a non-self in terms of a self defined as a separate, independent entity, separately existing, somehow arisen of its own self. So non-self in the sense that the self is empty of separate independent existence, but has interdependent existence, is independently existing. So I think you probably know, the Buddhist teachings are put into three sort of stages, or three turnings of the wheel. Traditionally, that's how they're categorized, whether we think of it literally or just metaphorically. So in the first turning of the wheel, the Buddha talked of impermanence, suffering, and non-self. In the second, we have the teachings on emptiness, interdependence. So there you can look at greater ideas of the interdependent existence of self and phenomena, of all phenomena. And then the third teachings are on the reality of Buddha nature. And that is because sometimes when we talk about emptiness or non-self or phrases like this, the mind goes right to the kind of nihilistic end of the spectrum. Empty, nothing matters, nothing's real, blah, 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 you know. And in order that our understanding of emptiness, or the reality of having phenomena having interdependent existence, empty of separate existence, In order to stop that realization becoming nihilistic, then it can be important to remind yourself of the reality of Buddha nature, inherent in every sentient being. Then we'll walk in a way which is not going to lead us towards grasping, but also not going to lead us to a nihilism of know this, know that. Yeah. So whenever you're considering non-self, please mix it with an understanding of Buddha nature. I encourage you to do that. Yeah. Okay, so somebody has asked me about unwanted thoughts. That's a big subject, and you haven't given me a lot of information there, and you know, there can be many responses to this, right? Because the level of a human and the methods a human can use, they're numerous. You know, the human can use the method of like talking to a therapist, being with their family, loving their dog, maybe reading some Buddhist philosophy, but there are many, many, many methods to helping a human be free of suffering. So I would encourage you to think for yourself about the places and the circumstances which bring to your mind a feeling of ease and of peacefulness. And don't be judgmental in terms of where that is. You know, don't be harsh on yourself in terms of, oh, okay, if it's, you know, actually when I'm pootling around in the garden, deadheading some roses, then fine. But ask yourself, where are the situations which cultivate in me a sense of ease and peacefulness? And cultivate those times, those experiences, so that you gain more confidence in the fact that your mind, like all minds of the humans, has the potential to realize its own peaceful nature. If you want to send me a follow-up message on that, again, you can do that. There are many, many ways to look at unwanted thoughts, but many of them will become very theoretical. And so one of the reasons to work with a teacher, you know, student-teacher thing is a teacher will help you to know more clearly what is helpful for you at which point, you know, because you could be in that situation and read some, you know, some wonderful text from somewhere, but it's not maybe helpful for you at that point. And that's one thing that is so helpful about having a teacher. And that's why a teacher is so emphasized in the Buddhist tradition, because they are seen to be most helpful with helping you see the nature of your mind. And that's why we place such a devotional and precious feeling around having a teacher who's prepared to guide you on the path, walk with you in the path. That's why the teacher is considered so important, because of these kinds of very real, you know, human dynamics. So I have no idea if I give you a teaching on the nature of thought, the ultimate nature of thought. It's probably not helpful for you at all right now. So it's not appropriate for me to do that. It is appropriate for me to encourage you to know that in every sentient being, the upper layers of the mind, particularly the human mind, upper layers of the mind are capable of thinking anything and debating and creating as much churning and churning and churning as they like. But from a yogic or a Buddhist point of view, there's an absolute belief in the inherent Buddha nature. And I think one of the things I find sometimes with people who go to meditation, maybe where they don't have all the conditions ready perhaps, is that they haven't felt themselves to be at ease or peaceful in other places. So they just don't have any trust that themselves their particular person, their particular mind can experience calmness. There's no confidence there in that. And that's why I encourage you to find that mind of ease in some area of your life. So you know you're not the only person on the planet that is never going to have a peaceful mind, because it's easy sometimes to sort of end up thinking that. Yeah. Okay. Okay, I'll just read this question out. Do you feel that your experience in Jakarta was out of some karma or something that is intended to be in your journey to direct you in your life adventure, or simply a random result of a system of, okay. You know, Mandy, when I wrote the first draft of the book, or the kind of fairly sorted draft of the book in the first instance had a series of songs in it, not my songs. It had song lyrics that ran through the book, because I was thinking, oh, you know, it'd be good to get a kind of, you know, what would you call it, a soundtrack. It was like a soundtrack to my life, because when you remember things from before, for me anyway, I tend to remember the songs, you know. So, you know, we had, you know, whatever, the Doors, just Reading. We had, I had a whole scene with Jimi Hendrix along the Watchtower at one point in Hong Kong. Love that song. And I don't know if you remember that song by John Lennon called Instant Karma. It said, instant karma's going to get you. I don't know if you remember that song. I might be talking to people that are like 20 years too young for this song. I don't know. I think when I was running down the corridor after I escaped, I did feel as if I was running from something that did feel something kind of, I don't know whether you call it karmic, or it just was a very big feeling. I can't really explain it. You know, but we should be wary. You know, karma, we can also attach to and think this is my karma, right? So the moments I had after the event were about seeing the interwoven nature of karma. His, mine, that person, that police, that corridor, that building, that place, that kind of, I don't know, it was like seeing the interwoven nature of karma. Yeah, I would say. So random, yeah, there's not much random in Buddhist philosophy when you look right down into it. Yeah, I like the word random. I have tried to introduce it in Bhutan, but they're not having it. I say random, they say karma. That's maybe a new mantra there for us all. So yeah, I hope that answers your question. It's a very good question. It's a very excellent question, Mandy. Oh, I have a bigger question here as well. Wait a minute, let me just have a look at this one now. How does the conceptualization of the orientation of the self chime with the Buddhist view? I.e. that ego can turn from being... Yeah, okay. So, yeah. So we can often think, oh, ego, very, very bad, right? But whether we look in the yogic tradition or the Buddhist tradition, you will find that the path of progress is in recognizing the skills and extraordinary opportunities of a human life. And that means things like your intelligence, your talents, where you were born, you know, recognizing all of the qualities that you have, extraordinary, and using them to practice, accumulate compassion and wisdom. This is not a rejection of those talents. It's about letting them really flourish for the good of all, right? So that's why in Buddhism we would study on a relative level in the beginning, what are called paramitas, or the 6 perfections. Sometimes in the Theravadan tradition, you'll hear of the 10 paramitas. In the Himalayas, we study the 6. So generosity, ethical conduct, patience. That one's very difficult for me. Enthusiastic diligence, meditative concentration, and wisdom. Right? And when you read those, those are very much about how do you live your life. How do you live your life and develop greater generosity? How do you free your mind from meanness and self-orientation? And how do you live your life more ethically, causing less suffering, etc., etc., etc. These are all things which are about freeing your current mind from the things which keep it trapped and unable to help you be a person that's wise and compassionate. They're not about chucking things out. They're about taking the skills you have and transforming them, as I've said, for greater good, for the relief of suffering, etc., etc., etc. And I don't think you can skip that part. That's an embodied human life. I hope that's kind of answered that question. Over the years, yeah. Paul, I don't know if that's helped you at all, or if you want to ask another question there. You can, and all of this stuff is fantastic, isn't it? Just being able to talk about it and discuss it and read books about it. I do encourage you to maybe you can remember the second to last verse of 37 Practices of Bodhisattva, right? Where it says, our job is to look at our mind. No amount of accumulation of books. Yeah, there's a just searing honesty looking at your own mind. That's the thing. That's why we practice. That's why we don't just read books. That's why we meditate. Good questions, Arkacha. Yeah, and if you want to talk more about the compassion stuff, remember, I'll be here at 11:30 tomorrow, and you will learn a lot, I think, about compassion. And if you already know a lot about compassion, you can ask me really, really tough questions about it from all kinds of places. But I'll be looking a little bit at a couple of teachings from Gampopa and Chenrezig, and why compassion is not a wibbly-wobbly, weak, and a wibbly thing. It's an incredibly powerful, strong, fearless thing. Yeah, so you might want to join in with that. If you have some other idea about some question you forgot from today, or you have some time to reflect and you need to come back with me, you can also sneak that question as well tomorrow. That'd be fine. Just about this not doing away with the self, so much as living in the world. It is doing away with the self as we've conceptually defined it, as a separate, all-important center of the universe. And as you so rightly say, like the 5 paths of yoga, right? And the Hatha, Raja, etc., and then Karma Yoga. Karma Yoga is a selfless action, isn't it? Always seeking to free us from the ever-present habit of clinging to a separate, all-important self, isn't it? So these two going hand in hand, and that is the path of Karma Yoga, when you say service in the world. I don't understand that question. So I'm going to skip that question. All right. Somebody very joyous is saying goodbye to us. yeah, maybe that is a good, that should be my next book, isn't it? Why Compassion Isn't Wibbly. Maybe that would be my next book. So I don't know about that other question there. I'm not too sure. I'm not too sure. We need two qualities, yeah? We need stable mind and we need a flexible mind. Not just stable, that kind of resilient thing that people like talking about, but also we need a flexible, kind, flexible when we deal with these things. Yeah, so I'm not sure about that. Yeah.
Emma, there was a question earlier about how does one find a teacher?
Oh, how do you find a teacher? Oh my goodness, yes, that's the ever present question, isn't it? Yes, I get asked this question a lot, I have to say, and I really understand why this question comes up a lot, because I do feel it's hard in the West to find a clear path. It can be hard to find a teacher, and our way of being is different here from in Asia in terms of these things. And if you're interested in a Buddhist teacher, you may have noticed that you probably weren't born in a place with lots of chortens, Himalayas and temples, which is that extra challenge, you know. So if we're being really strict on a Buddhist path, then the primary cause is Buddha nature, the working basis is precious human life, and the essential next condition is the teacher and the guide, right? With those three qualities, then you're off and running. So it is important to have a true teacher. So you can develop the wish for that profoundly in your heart. You can imagine what would change for you if you had it. What would the feelings that would come? What is the state of mind that you would develop if you had it? In practical terms, I don't know. But in the mind terms, that's the thing to do. Coming maybe this lifetime, maybe next lifetime, you have to set down these mental pathways, right? You have to prepare the soil, isn't it? Your experience of Buddhist schools groups in the West, you participate with them, please. I'm pretty rebellious. You've probably worked that out right now. I have my students. I have my practice. I crack on. Not sure I like joining the brownies. So Susan, I don't know really answer that question. Is there anything about your personal story that you want to share right now? No, other than look, I mean, seriously. You know, what you're capable of becoming is, I believe, is so much greater than you may imagine it yourself. Please think big. That would be what I'd add there, I think. Yeah. All right, Katja?
Yeah, thank you. I think the questions have been great, and I've certainly enjoyed your answers. In fact, I'm sitting here with a big smile and lots of warmth in my heart.
Oh, good. That's absolutely fantastic. Well, I've really enjoyed it, and I really appreciate the questions, because the questions make everything come alive, isn't it? And this should be a dialogue. I don't want to sit here and kind of pronounce on stuff. So very nice to see everybody. I think we'll say goodbye at the moment, and then maybe tomorrow we'll come back. And if you, I'm going to come to Compassion Talk tomorrow. You know, you can come with any questions, or if you want to think about that a little bit before tomorrow, so you can get the most out of that session, then please do. And I will really enjoy talking about my very favorite subject tomorrow. Yeah. Oh yes, and please buy the book. That's my Michael Parkinson, whatever, Jay Leno moment, you know. And so that will tell you about how the charity was founded, and it'll prepare you for any situation where you too may be held hostage for the benefit of all sentient beings. So yeah, so thank you very much. Yeah. Okay, Katja.
Thank you, Emma. That was fantastic. I'm going to stop the recording now. And yeah, thank you so much. That's been really, really